It all started on an ordinary Tuesday morning at JFK Airport. Karoline Leavitt, a rising political figure known for her sharp rhetoric and growing influence, was making her way through security when a routine checkpoint turned into something much bigger. An airport staff member, following what they claimed was protocol, tried to stop her. What happened next wasn't just a misunderstanding. It spiraled into a national controversy. And just minutes later, Karoline's career would take a hit so severe, there was no coming back. Karoline was already running late for a high-profile interview scheduled with a major news network in downtown Manhattan. Clad in a sharp navy suit and carrying a leather briefcase, she was clearly someone with places to be and people waiting on her words. As she reached the TSA checkpoint, a young airport employee, later identified as Marcus Hill, stepped forward and asked for her boarding pass and ID again, despite her already having gone through the first round of screening. There was a brief pause. Karoline raised an eyebrow. "I've already been cleared," she said, her voice calm but firm. "I need to see it again, ma'am," Marcus replied, avoiding eye contact. Witnesses say the moment was tense, but still within the bounds of routine. It wasn't until Marcus began making a call on his radio, quietly but deliberately, that things shifted. Karoline asked him directly, "Is there a problem?" He didn't respond. Instead, he gestured for another officer to come over. That's when Karoline pulled out her phone. Within seconds, she was recording. The video, which would be uploaded to her social media less than an hour later, showed a brief exchange where she accused the staff of targeting and delaying a public figure without cause. It was clear, even in the shaky footage, that she was both angry and composed, a dangerous combination. The clip went viral within the hour. But what the internet didn't see, at least not right away, was what happened off camera. What the internet didn't see, at least not right away, was what happened off camera. When the second officer arrived, Karoline's tone grew sharper, more urgent. She reminded them who she was: a former congressional candidate, a media figure, a known conservative voice with millions of followers. She mentioned the words harassment and legal action. Marcus, still holding his radio, looked like he was caught between a protocol he didn't fully understand and a storm he didn't see coming. He wasn't rude. He wasn't aggressive. He was uncertain. And in that uncertainty, Karoline found her angle. By the time she boarded her flight, yes, she was eventually let through. The video had been edited and uploaded. It was trimmed just enough to highlight the tension, the implied disrespect, the emotional beat that made it all feel wrong. But what Karoline didn't expect, sitting in seat 3A with a cold coffee and a colder stare out the window, was what happened next. The internet had questions. Some people asked, why was she recording so quickly? Others asked, was this really about injustice or image? And somewhere, buried under the flood of likes, retweets, and angry duets on TikTok, was a quiet voice. It belonged to Marcus. He didn't post a video. He didn't give a statement. He just went home that day, confused, tired, and told by his supervisor to lay low until things calmed down. But calm down never came. That evening, a local journalist picked up the story. They found Marcus through mutual friends, and over a cup of coffee in a quiet corner of Queens, he told them everything. No edits, no filters, just what he saw, what he felt. And suddenly, the narrative wasn't so clear anymore. The article came out 2 days later, tucked inside the online edition of the Queen's Chronicle with a quiet headline, "The Other Side of the Terminal." It didn't go viral, not at first, but it was thoughtful, carefully written. It didn't paint Karoline as a villain, nor Marcus as a victim. It simply laid out the facts. That Marcus had been new to that terminal. That a last-minute security update had been issued that morning due to an unrelated concern. That he didn't recognize Karoline, not out of disrespect, but because he genuinely didn't know who she was. He said something in the article that stuck with readers, the few who read it at the time. "I wasn't trying to stop her. I was just trying to do what I was told. But I wasn't trained for this kind of situation, where someone's power feels bigger than the rules you're given." Meanwhile, Karoline was still riding the wave of attention. Cable news invited her on. Her followers multiplied. She spoke passionately about everyday Americans being mistreated by systems with no accountability. To her audience, she was a fighter, unafraid, composed, and completely in control of her story. But late one night, a message showed up in her inbox. It was from a stranger. No name, just a link to the Chronicle article and one sentence. "You should read this." She hesitated. First, she ignored it, but something about the simplicity made her pause. She clicked. As her eyes scanned the screen, something inside her shifted. Not dramatically, not all at once, but like the slow turning of a heavy page. She remembered Marcus's face. Not the one on the phone video, but the one when she first approached the checkpoint. The uncertainty, the youth, the silence. She sat back in her chair. For the first time since the incident, the noise of it all seemed to fade. That was the moment she realized her video had power, but maybe too much of it. Karoline didn't sleep that night. The article stayed open on her laptop, the glow of the screen washing over her quiet apartment. Outside, the city buzzed faintly. A siren, a honk, someone laughing in the street, but none of it reached her. She reread Marcus's words, especially one line near the end. "Sometimes, the hardest part of doing your job is when you're not sure who you're protecting anymore." She sat with that. Karoline had always believed in clarity, clear values, clear fights, clear lines between right and wrong. But now, she couldn't help wondering, had she mistaken certainty for truth? Across the city, Marcus was finishing a shift. He had returned to work quietly under the radar. No one said anything to his face, but he could feel the shift in energy. Some colleagues avoided eye contact. Others whispered. One quietly slipped him a folded napkin with a smiley face and the words, "Hang in there." That small gesture meant more than he could say. What struck Marcus most wasn't that Karoline hadn't responded to the article. It was that she hadn't tried to retaliate. No angry post, no legal threats, nothing. It was silence, and somehow that was louder. A week later, he was sweeping through the terminal after a late shift when a woman in a coat brushed past him, then paused. She turned back. It was Karoline. She wasn't filming. She wasn't wearing makeup. No cameras, no entourage, just her. There was a moment, that strange kind of moment when two people who have seen each other's worst simply stand still. "I read the article," she said. Marcus nodded, unsure what to say. So he waited. "I didn't see it before," she continued. "What that moment really was. What I did to you." She exhaled, folding her arms. I told the world a story. I just didn't ask if it was the true one. Marcus studied her for a long second, then simply said, "Most people don't." There was no grand apology, no dramatic forgiveness, just two people face to face, in the middle of a terminal where people rushed past without ever knowing a quiet reckoning was unfolding beside Gate 12. And in that quiet, something settled. Not everything was healed, but something was heard. Karoline didn't expect forgiveness. That moment at the airport, no press releases, was never meant to be public. But something about being seen honestly without performance had stirred something in her. For years, she had mastered the art of the message. This time, she chose silence. The next day, she declined 2 interviews, then a third. Instead, she reached out to a small civic media initiative in Brooklyn, the kind that worked with students, local voices, underfunded educators. She didn't go there to be featured. She asked to listen. It surprised a lot of people, especially her inner circle. Her PR manager was confused. Her campaign advisors were worried. But she had already stepped away from most of that. Quietly, without ceremony, she stopped returning calls from political networks. The machine kept moving without her. Meanwhile, Marcus kept his job, not because of a miracle, but because his quiet professionalism had earned the quiet respect of his supervisors. In time, the stares faded. The whispers stopped. He was offered a mentorship role for new hires, something small but steady, something human. 3 months later, Karoline spoke at a college town hall in upstate New York. There were no lights, no cameras, just folding chairs and a few dozen students. She didn't speak about politics. She spoke about how easily we mistake power for truth, how quickly we weaponize a story when we're hurt or afraid, and how long it takes to walk it back. After the talk, a young woman raised her hand and asked, "Do you think people can change?" Karoline paused, thought for a long time, then smiled, not for show, just soft. "Yes," she said, "but only when they're willing to be wrong first." That answer would never trend. It wouldn't make a headline. But somewhere in a crowded terminal, Marcus was helping a nervous traveler through her first flight, unaware that the woman he once stopped at security was learning, in her own way, to start again.